and piercing parlors, massage facilities, nail technicians, cosmetologists and estheticians, electrolysis services, laser hair removal services and similar personal care and treatment facilities, dog grooming, auto dealerships, golf courses, disc golf courses, pool construction and maintenance, as well as furniture and mattress stores.
Hello, my name is Nick Higgins. I'm an officer with the Berwick Police Department. I've been with Berwick for 5 years. I've been in the law enforcement field for 20. I live locally with my wife and children, and my wife's a police officer as well. And in addition to the typical police officer duties here in Berwick, under the leadership and direction of Chief Town, one of my additional duties is to work towards state accreditation for our police department. This is a program that was unveiled by the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. It's a program that typically takes agencies 2 years to accomplish, and we've been working roughly a little over a year at that. It is a program that increases officer safety, reduces liability to the town, and enhances our overall communication within, and also increases our efficiencies as well. The program consists of 162 standards which address the most critical functions that an agency performs, sets minimum standards, and then we have to meet all of those minimum standards to achieve accreditation. In addition to the accreditation process, I also coordinate training here within the department and trainings that officers would attend outside the agency. I typically try to host a class for our agency as well as for others coming from other agencies roughly once a month. And what that does is reduce tuition costs for our officers to attend, where a hosting agency typically will get 1 or 2 free slots, which saves the taxpayers money on training. Training for law enforcement is always ongoing and continuous, where case law is always changing the law and how we perform our job and carry out our duties. Therefore, training is something that we focus on and is always continues. Thank you.
You, because I can't do it any other way. So
cool.
all right, let's try that. So meetings, because all I have is this one.
Oh, I got invited to the Board of Selectmen meeting for May 26th.
That was so I could get you as a user. I thought I had to do it that way.
Oh, I got you.
No problem.
Let me leave and come. Have you added me as a?
I did under the planning board meeting under your name. That's the only place I can do it.
I'll leave and come back and we'll try that.
I don't think we're going to need that tonight.
We might.
All right, so it is 6:31. Are you guys ready to go?
We're going.
Okay. All right, good evening. Welcome everybody to the Berwick Planning Board meeting. This is a regular meeting for Thursday, May 21st, 2020. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic for which it
which
stands,
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so tonight we have present, let's see, we have regular member Sean Winston. We also have Frank. We've got David Ross Lyons here. And we've also, let's see. So absent tonight is Mike LaRue and Nicole Fecto. We also have the code enforcement officer here, Jennifer McCabe. We have the town planner here, James Bellissimo, and then we have Lee J here with us as well. Moving on to the public comment session. It's open to any resident in Berwick or property owner to talk about anything that relates to the planning board. Is there anybody in the waiting room, Terry? Okay, so Terry, you were on mute, so James couldn't hear that.
I apologize. Margaret Wilson Dagan, a G Paquette, Butch, and Tom.
So Tom's Tom Wright. Gil is the engineer for the solar project, and then Dagan. I don't know who Butch is. I think Butch probably is another Dagan.
Okay. I'm going to try to leave the meeting so that you can co-host and see if it works that way.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think you can assign me as the host.
Yes.
It worked. Hey. All right.
All right, James, is there anybody for public comment, do you think?
Nobody for public comment. Nope, they're all here for
They're
the,
here for the public hearing.
correct. Yep.
All right, next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the May 7th, 2020 meeting.
I didn't find anything that was off. Anybody else?
They're great.
Everybody's muted.
I didn't see anything blatant.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, Frank.
I missed the very beginning of that meeting, but James finally let me in, so.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the May 7th planning board meeting minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion from Sean. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by David Ross Lyons. Anybody, a further discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. David,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and Frank.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is the public hearing, site plan review, solar array, essential services and construction over 3,000 square feet. The address is 193 Route 236, map R66, lot 6A. It's in the R2 zone, and the applicant is Berwick Solar LLC. This is a public hearing just for this application only. James, do we have anybody in the waiting room?
So we have Margaret Dagan, and she was at the site walk. I believe that's the wife of Larry. So it's Margaret is loading in right now. I believe applicants are loading in as well. So
Can you see us?
Yep, you look great. So we have Margaret. Here's Butch.
All right, so we'll start off with Butch. Butch, can you just state your full name and address for the record? Butch, can you hear me? Butch, can you hear me? I think his mom.
That's Mr. Dagan, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, he's not muted, so he said, "Oh, he's just setting up the audio." There you go. I'll unmute you now. All right, David, you should be good to go to speak.
Okay, so Butch, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, Butch, can you just state your name? And if your wife wants to speak, just take turns, but state your full name and address for the record.
David Dagan, 189 Route 236, Berwick, Maine.
Okay, this is a public hearing for this application. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
We sent in a letter of concern stating that we didn't like what was going on because we were extremely worried about our well being contaminated. And I think everybody's got that letter, that email that we sent. And we were, like I said, out in the field, we've been here for I've been here for all my life. And this is going to be an awful eyesore. We're in the country and we're used to waking up to the birds and the bees and the deer and the fox. And now we're going to be waking up to a ugly solar panel sitting out there. And we basically just don't like it.
And,
Also, my wife wants to speak too. You got to say your name.
yeah. Hi, I'm Deborah Dagan, and one of my main concerns is the fact that if one of the solar panels gets damaged and chemicals can leak into the ground, and we have a shallow well on our property, and the property all out here is mainly ledge, and the water all filters down into our property. And, like I said, we have a shallow well, and I'm concerned that contaminants in the well could obviously affect us and affect our health. And so I just think that needs to be a concern that should be addressed, because, I mean, like my husband said, we've been residents here for a long time. We've paid our property taxes, and, why should our health be endangered because of this project?
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
All right, you're welcome to stay in the waiting room, or you're welcome to log off and watch on channel 98 on Comcast if you have that. James, can you please put the Daigles in the waiting room for the next? Thank you for your comments.
No, there was a Peggy or Margaret, if she wanted to speak, she's still in the room.
Okay, so this is a public hearing for the site plan review for the solar array out on 236. The applicant is Berwick Solar LLC. Does Margaret Wilson would she like to speak?
Hi, good evening. This is Margaret Wilson Dagan. Our address is 15 Pigtail Lane in Berwick, Maine. My husband Larry and I live at this address. We are relatives to the other Dagans. We are concerned with this development. Our concern is because we live in the country, we are going to see this out of our house. And I know they say that there's 100-foot buffer from our land. And I know that they state that there's going to be vegetation. But from everything that we've seen on the plans, we're going to see it. There's no way around it. You can see where they're going to put these solar panels from Pigtail Lane. That's a concern. We understand that there is, development in our town. We get that. But all we're asking is for some type of consideration as to how far into this land this is going to go. We know that they have a set plan in right now, but can that be adjusted? Where is the vegetation going to go? Where is the fence going to go that's going to surround this? These are our concerns. Is the fence going to be inside the vegetation or outside the vegetation?
All right, so ma'am, what I'm doing is I'm taking down all the questions that come in over the public hearing, and then when we get into the next portion of this meeting, I'm going to ask the applicant to address all these questions.
Okay.
Did you have anything else?
I don't at this time. It's just my husband has been a long time resident of Berwick. I'm an implant, yes, but he has lived on this land all of his life. It's what he knows, it's what he has. He's 63, you know, it's all he has.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments, Margaret. And if you'd like to stay in the waiting room here and watch this online, otherwise you can watch it on channel 95. It's 95. I was wrong about the channel there. It's channel 95 on Comcast. James, anybody else for the public hearing?
That is it.
Okay, seeing nobody else come forward for the public hearing, I'll close the public hearing. Moving on to old business, site plan review, solar array, essential services and construction over 3,000 square feet. The address is 198 or 193 Route 236, map R66. It's lot 6A. It's in the R2 zone, and the applicant is Berwick Solar LLC. James, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Since the last meeting, staff requested a decommission plan. The applicant said the array will have a life cycle of 30 to 50 years. We might have questions about, you know, what if it's 20 years? How likely is it to be 30 to 50 years? And I mean, I would defer to Lee J in a minute on how we deal with projects that are 30 to 50 years into the future, you know, and how there's a decommission plan, but how that's enforced, you know, it'll be in the file, of course, but I'd be interested in hearing what we do in terms of conditions of approval to make sure that when that happens, the decommission plan is followed, or if we want to beef that up. A letter was sent in from Mr. Dagan, and the applicants have sent in a response dealing with, I think one of the main issues was the environmental hazards that the panels may have. And the applicant mentioned that the solar panels will have certifications, and I think it would be prudent for us to have them include those certifications probably before construction or receiving certificate of occupancy. So those were the key points that I had from the last meeting.
All right, Lee J, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. I mean, you know, a 30 to 50 lifespan is a long time, but I think the purpose and intent of requesting that, I have seen some of these projects that only have a 20-year lifespan. And so it's important for us to have on the record how they're going to decommission this facility if and when their solar panels are no longer useful. You know, are they going to continue to operate and replace them, or are they eventually going to decommission? And once, you know, I mean, I think the bigger issue for this is that just like cell towers, completely different animal, but we started asking the same thing of them, is are there decommissioning plans? You know, once that tower has lasted its usefulness, is it coming down? And if it is coming down, you know, how and when? And I think that with this type of development, it's also important. I mean, we don't ask it of brick and mortar buildings. Those can last hundreds of years, but there is a useful life expectancy of solar arrays. And I think it's important for us to have on the record and in the file for future people in our positions to be able to look to that and make sure that when decommissioning does occur, it occurs the way it was proposed to be done. Relevant to trying to bond it or have any letters of credit, I mean, that's, you know, that would be kind of craziness for us to do that, or there's a 30 to 50 year lifespan. Doesn't make sense to do that. For someone or some company that buys another company that buys another company along the way to continue to renew some sort of bond or letter of credit for that, no one's going to keep track of that. But at least we will have a written document in the plan as to when these things are decommissioned, how are they going to be decommissioned?
Mr. Feldman, did you receive the decommissioning plan that we provided? We provided that as a supplement to our site plan application, and we're happy for that to go in our file.
Yeah, I did. But this is really, you folks haven't really been too involved with us. I have been the planning person for the town for about 3 years now, but I'm sliding out of that position. It's really James's baby now, and I'm just kind of, as you are, I'm a consultant to the town, and will eventually be completely disappearing from planning board activity.
Okay, understood. So,
yeah.
But James, you have seen the decommissioning plan and have it appended to our file and in our file.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think the question is kind of the level of being able to enforce that 40 years from now, if there's questions on who's the owner of the property, if the lease runs out. So that's, I think that's something that we can work out through the conditions of approval.
Okay. Well, I would stress that Les Bodwell is maintaining ownership of the project of the property. We're very excited to put this array on that site. As you noted, these really do have lifespans of 30 to 50 years. We see the ability of switching out panels later on as a positive. Who knows when that'll actually even be necessary, frankly. But while these arrays are in place, they're generating. They're providing environmental benefits. They're providing revenue. So these are assets that are generating both environmental benefits and revenues while they're operating. So I don't think it's a case where someone's going to build it and forget about it. These assets will have value while they're in existence. So I don't think it's not going to be a white elephant if that's the concern.
Right.
Okay, a couple questions that came in during the public hearing was talk once again about the chemicals in the solar panels. I know we talked about that on the site walk, and I asked if you would be able to send the abutters information, technical spec sheets on that. Talk a little bit about the chemicals in the solar panels.
Sure. So they're all solid state, which is important to realize. Additionally, we use a tier 1 module. So that's top of the line. That's bankable. That's hundreds, millions of modules have been produced on the market, but they are rated non-hazardous, and we have that certification. So hopefully,
we're happy to provide.
Yeah, we're happy to provide that as well.
Would in case of damage, for example, like if a tree fell on one of the solar panels and it cracked, split in half, what's the potential of anything leaching into the groundwater from the site?
Yeah, I'd say almost minimal, and I would like to just point out that if that were to happen, we monitor the site on a per module basis. So we would send someone, next day if possible, as soon as possible, to replace that damaged module with a new system. So it's fully in our benefit to do that. We've got granular monitoring, and we'll do so as soon as possible.
You said almost minimal. You meant almost zero.
Yes,
almost zero.
Excuse me.
And there's no liquids.
There's no liquid.
Again, in the solid state.
Lee J?
David, I just wanted to go back on a question. I'm sure you'll provide it at the time, but I think for the record, who are the panels rated through?
There's a number of different rating agencies, TUV, UL, or two.
So UL is one of the rating agencies? I mean, that's who everybody knows, and I just want to get it out there that it's a known entity that's rating these.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
And then the other question that we got in the public hearing was the vegetation and the fence. So talk a little bit first about the fence. I'm kind of curious about this. We talked somewhat about the vegetation, so, but talk about the fence first.
Yeah, the fence is a chain link fence. It'll be about 7 feet tall. And then the screening, the question was asked is where would the screening be? And the screening is outside of the fence. So the fence, like we were talking about when we were doing our site visit, the fence is about 100 feet away from the property line. And then you have that vegetated buffer that's just outside of that. And that's a mix of evergreens. There's, I think, 6 or 7 species of evergreens. And the heights vary from about, I think it's 7 to 8 feet in height. That they would be installed, and they're a bag and burlap planting. So they're you know, it's not like a sapling that's a few inches tall. These are like Christmas tree size, I would say. And then the interspersion is such that they're spaced right next to each other, so they do provide a screen. And of course, we want evergreens so that it's a year-round screening versus you know, a screening only during the growing season. The screening is, and that was submitted, the screening is pretty much the entire length of that, like paralleling that pigtail lane. And then the array does have a chamfer as you head towards the road, and then the screening continues there. And then there's, where the entrance is, there's quite a bit of a buffer there before you get to the panels themselves, and a natural buffer which will be maintained. It'll be the existing road that's already built. And then the trees that are in that area that we were able to see today will be maintained.
All right, questions from the board. Let's start off with David Ross Lyons.
All right, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions on the design itself. Are these units going to be static, or are there movements?
Static. Static.
Okay. Like, how about maintenance? What's the maintenance schedule? What's needed to maintain these?
Yeah, it's pretty minimal. I mean, you know, it really is setting it. We will have an O&M agreement with a provider, and we'll maintain the system on a biannual scheduled maintenance, but also, as we touched on before, we'll have it monitored in such a way that if there were ever a maintenance issue, we would do so in an orderly fashion.
And you did mention that the response to your would be monitored in real time. What's your typical response time for a maintenance issue on these?
It's just 72 hours.
Okay. That's what I have for now. Let me keep going. If I can come back.
Okay. Sean Winston.
I guess my question is, if one were to break, I mean, the interior, I don't know what goes into the components of making up a solar panel. I'm not a solar expert, but is it a fluid on the inside? I mean, and you know, you just said 72 hours to respond. If it is fluid, that's 72 hours that's now sitting on the ground potentially. So if it does break, is there a DEP notification that has to be put out or anything like that?
There's not. I mean, they are in a solid state. So, you know, that risk is incredibly minimal.
The components are solid state rather than.
Okay.
Anything else, Sean?
Nope, that was all I had.
Okay, Frank Underwood.
Thank you, David. Thank you guys for coming. Just a couple of questions. Following along with that solid state, you've got inverters and you got transformers on site. Do they have the potential of leaking?
No, I mean, no. I think it's, again, a rather minimal thing.
I don't know what would leak. Mineral oil.
Mineral oil. Yeah.
Well, transformers usually have an oil fill to them, don't
they? It's what they use now is mineral oil. Like the old transformers from years ago, I think they had PCBs associated with them.
Yeah, correct.
And those have all been pretty much retired, I would think. So all the new ones have a mineral oil that's associated with them.
The application says there are no buildings. Pretty clear. It says no buildings. And I think we talked about the panel arrays and we talked about where the inverters would be located. I believe they're on the ends of each panel array. But is that true? There are no buildings on this site.
There are no buildings on the site.
except the temporary porta potty when you guys are in and out of there, well, whether working or decommissioning.
Yep, exactly.
My understanding is that you are leasing this property, correct?
That's right.
So the ownership maintains with Mr. Bodwell or one of Mr. Bodwell's companies or
That's right.
groups. Does he have the right to sell that out from under you? And what are the terms of that lease? I mean, down the road, if we're looking at a decommissioning plan, somebody is going to have to be held liable or held responsible for that. Ultimately, it would fall on the landowner, I would assume. I mean, this is just a use that he's leased to you. The town's recourse would be through the landowner. I mean, obviously, there might be something between you guys and the landowner over an issue, but the point is that does he have the right to sell that out from underneath your lease as long as your lease is standing for 20 or 30 or whatever the year is?
I would have to go back and quote the lease, but my belief is that likely he would, and if not, then he would with our consent. So, we believe that the lease is a recorded document, as is the site plan. My understanding is the site plan approval, if we were to get it, would also be a recorded document. So if this, if the parcel were to sell, those obligations would run with the land.
Okay. If the property has a decommissioning plan on it, I'm going to ask Lee J to possibly weigh in on this. I understand the security and performance bonds and holding those in the file for 30 years, but is there a way that a lien can be placed against the property, a standing lien of some dollar amount, minimal amount or whatever, but at least it would give the town standing to go back on the landowner for a closure or decommissioning plan?
Oh, that's a great question, Frank. I don't know that I'm actually educated on that enough. I mean, I'd almost want to see the town's attorney.
I think we would have a big issue with a lien being placed against the project.
It's not against your project. It would be against the landowner. You guys are only there as a leasing it. So
Frank,
I'm saying that would it be against? It would be against whoever owns the land.
Would the lien, Frank, be for the purpose of non-payment of taxes?
No, for decommissioning.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that a lien in that case would work. I mean, the only way you could do it would be some sort of bond or letter of credit or cash amount held in perpetuity in a non-interest bearing account. But to have it that far out would be, kind of crazy, because so much turnover will occur by staff over the years that it's going to get lost, in the sense of no one's going to know about it. No one's going to remember it unless there's something recorded in the registry that says it.
A lien is recorded against the property.
Well, yeah, but you'd have no reason to lien the property from day one. And so the only way you could lien the property if there was some sort of violation or non-payment of taxes. That's why I'm talking bonding or letter of credit. Yeah. But even if you do that, I mean, I've seen projects, gravel pits that have letters of credit 3 years out. People are going, well, where's the letter? Where is it? And no one can find it. And so when you're talking, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm not sure in the end, it's going to really do anything for us.
Okay. Well, again, just trying to find some way to make sure you got a total against that, because that is a cost. And I'm assuming you guys would dismantle the solar array panel yourself, or you would enter into a contract. And is that a condition in your lease with Mr. Bodwell, that you guys will decommission it? That would be at least another place to put this, instead of in an approval letter in the planning board, but actually in their lease.
Sure. So it'll either be us physically decommissioning it or a contractor. I would also note that, maybe it's a cost, maybe it's not. Recycling solar panels. I don't know what the market's going to look like in 30 to 50 years, whether you'll actually make money from decommissioning it. So,
Tonight.
It's way out into the future to tell. As 30 to 50 years, honestly, I think is conservative for how long this thing is going to operate and generate revenue. I mean, there are power generating facilities throughout Maine and Massachusetts that are 100 years old, right? Once this gets in, I don't see it.
Who paid for the decommissioning of the Wiscasset nuclear power plant? I think the ratepayer did by the time we were all done.
James, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I had some ideas on the language, and I'll throw it out there, and maybe this is a lead on something. Now, my suggestion would be to require you got EMI to give us a baseline amount of power, and then we can request once there's a certain, say it's 10% of producing the electricity or whatever. So that's 50 years from now. We have the language that the landowner is responsible for implementing the decommissioning plan within 120 days. And then if the decommissioning plan isn't implemented by then you're in a land use violation. Then that's fines. So that's kind of where my head was at for a way to enforce that. And then it'd be in the file. I mean, we have.
James, can I?
Yep.
Sorry.
I mean,
so that gets tricky. Was it my turn?
I'm not done.
No, let him answer that question, Frank, and then I'll come back.
Well,
to
that's good. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That gets tricky as far as putting essentially trips on us, where if you generate this much, you actually have to decommission the project. Obviously, we can't foresee anything happening that would put us out of commission for a year. But let's say there was a huge earthquake, right? There's not going to be an earthquake in Berwick, but let's say there was something huge where the project was out of commission for a year, right? And we were working to get it fixed, but we didn't meet that threshold. Then it just creates frankly, it creates more questions than it answers. If you wanted to put a caveat on there that said, after year 30, if you hit the 10% thing, that might be something we can live with, but I don't, it's a pinhole risk that I just don't think that we could accept at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I'd be fine with that. And I think there's ways that you can write it and just it has to be, the sun shining, regular conditions. The whole thing is you just don't want people 50 years from now holding the bag, because it's not going to be left. That's the property owner probably, it'll probably be your kids, and your kids are probably great, but we see this often where people's kids take ownership of a property or whatever, or it gets sold again, and then people aren't responsible for it, and it becomes blight, essentially.
Yeah.
But I understand there are economic incentives to recouping the costs, but I think we can work on that language.
Yeah, if you want to work on that language, and if we want to tie it to after year 30, then that's something that we could consider.
Okay, Frank, another question?
Yes. I know the history of this site because we looked at that property as the Economic Development Group back in 2000, and it's been in tree growth for a long time. When they cut that off, they did not leave any natural trees along the buffering edge, because it sounds like your landscaping plan is you were planting 7 to 8 foot mix of trees, but basically none of the existing tree growth trees were left. Is that correct?
Well, there's quite a bit of trees out there. The landscaping plan is to provide assurances to the planning board and hopefully dispel fears of neighbors that we're taking it an extra step to put screening in place.
My question was, did they leave any trees when they cut it? I mean, there's supposedly a 50-foot access for Les Bodwell to follow the property line that runs parallel to the Pigtail Lane abutters. Is that still treed, or was that clear cut?
I don't know the answer to that question, because I know that there's trees out there. I just can't speaks specifically to that 50 feet.
I'm just
I
trying
know
to,
there's a lot of trees.
I just
There
know
are-
there was a pretty substantial stand of trees out there at one point in time. And if they were all taken down, now I can understand the abutters' concern on landscaping because that natural tree growth screening is no longer there. And you guys now have to come in and plant the screening, which is going to take time to grow back up and fulfill that purpose of kind of disguising that side of the property.
The screening is voluntary. I mean, we put together a landscaping plan, because we wanted to protect the views and so forth and have that part of our application. It's not because there's no trees there. There are trees there.
Okay. I apologize for not making the site walk today, but
The trees are going to get cut though that are there.
Not all of them, though.
No, not all of them,
Not
but
all.
there are trees that will be cut. too.
well, can a tree cutting plan be kind of put together to leave some more substantial trees that would kind of fill in so it doesn't look like it's just a row of conifers, but it's a kind of a mix of what was there and what you're going to add. I mean, I trying to just safeguard the abutters who don't want to look at this thing that
Right, yeah.
they've seen all the deer and the fox and everything else come through there.
All right, Lee J.
Yeah, I think, Frank, I think what you're trying to get to is that rather than having a planting scheme of, 8 feet on center, 2 rows type of thing, that whatever they plant out there be planted in a natural vegetative way so that it looks like they've been there for 100 years, so that it's not a row of trees, but it's more natural in the way they're placed.
Exactly. And the only other thing to that is that where Mr. Bodwell has maintained that 50-foot easement to go along there, I guess I wouldn't want him to come in there and clear cut that either after we've made this whole effort to try to naturally blend new plantings and existing plantings. So somehow we
can do that. We can do that. We can take care we initially kind of provided a screen, but we can take care to maybe shade it a little bit so it looks like it's been there 100 years. Sure.
Okay, and just a kind of a side question to that tree growth area is, do we know when it came out of tree growth, was the appropriate fee assessed? Because it seems to me if you're in tree growth, you're paying a certain rate for taxes.
Karen's on top of it.
Pardon?
Karen's on top of it.
Okay, and I guess I'd want to make sure that that is paid. It's not, if there's a fee that's being assessed to Mr. Bodwell or whatever, that is paid and not just floating out there. That would be important to me. I did get a chance to look at the permits, the Army Corps permit and the other ones that came in. And we're talking about fill, certain square foot areas of fill. And it prompted the question, do we actually need to issue a fill permit to them, James or Lee J? They haven't asked for one, but I'm sure they're over 10 cubic yards.
So I don't know what is that. That's a separate permit through Jen.
You read the
I
Army.
was
You
going
read the
to
Army
say I'd
Corps
defer to
permit.
Jen if she's around to see if she knows.
You read the Army Corps permit. They've given the permit, but still, it doesn't override any local permits that are required.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. If there are required permits at the local level, regardless of the fact that Army Corps or DEP or anybody else issues their level of permit, the town still has to issue their permit if one is required.
And then I'm a little concerned about, we call it temporary fill, 5,760 square feet, and permanent fill, 1,450 feet, okay? But when you go to their plan, the temporary is not fill, it's to modify or alter the vegetation only, okay? So is that a misstatement of what a fill permit? Because I don't want to get in a situation where we all of a sudden fill in wetlands and nothing's more permanent than something temporary. You know what I mean? And then we end up now not taking that fill out. But when I went to the VHB plans, it said modification or alter vegetation only. And it's at the rear of the property. Both of those permits are at the very rear of the property. So I guess I just want to make sure, one, do we need to issue them, or they need to file a permit for the permanent fill, which is the 1,400 square feet.
All right, why don't we have Jen weigh in on that, Frank?
Okay.
Jennifer?
Looks like,
Hey
sorry,
guys,
I'm not-
sorry about that. I don't think so. I mean, unless we have something specific that says that, I don't think we do.
it just says
No permit.
more than
Sorry,
10
Frank, I couldn't
cubic
hear you.
yards.
What did you say, James?
It says more than, filling an earth moving of more than 10 cubic yards is a permit.
Okay, so permit through us.
Yeah, and it would just be like getting a sign permit, right? So it's something that's done after the conditional use or site plan.
Yeah,
Yep.
they have to file a permit because it's gonna, I mean, even if it's a foot deep of fill that they're gonna put in, and it's for that access road, and it's gonna be permanent, it's gonna be 50 yards every foot of fill you put in there, so.
Right, and they're
going to
gonna-
exceed that 10.
They're gonna need a permit for that fill at the local level, but the design and everything that they're going to give you is the design from their approvals that Army Corps and DEP would have reviewed. So it's basically paperwork being done at the local level to issue the fill permit, but Army Corps and DEP will have oversight, and what they fill or do with that material will be whatever they got approvals for from those agencies.
I guess I just want to make sure there is a permit issued locally, because we don't need an abutter coming in and saying, hey, they should have got a permit for that 1,400 square
Yep.
feet at the end.
Now we know, now it's on the record now, yep.
It's just checking off a box on the thing.
James,
What
where
else?
did you see that? Are you looking at that?
Yeah, it's on the land use ordinance table,
Under
page
miscellaneous or
38.
whatever.
Page 38.
Okay, thank
And then I know they're talking about a waiver for the soils. And I know we're not putting anything out there that would really require an evaluation of the soils. But I would like to see at a minimum, the Soil Conservation Service boundary lines. There are broad brush boundary line. I think these guys know what I'm talking about.
The
And they
medium
have
intensity.
soil classifications. I would like to at least see those on the drawing, on the site plan, okay? And it's simply just transposing them from the soils maps onto their, interpolating where they would go. And then I'd like to have them also do a rough calculation of whether they are well drained, moderately drained, or poorly drained. Just a rough and I realize that is applied to density calculations, but down the road, this use could go away. That site is going to have been impacted. When they dismantle everything, they're going to look at just the barren hill there. And now someone's going to come in there and possibly put housing in there. And at least if we had a baseline of those soil areas, then we know that the soil has not been modified or engineered for development, such as we had an issue come up on another application that has been, since I believe, withdrawn. But doesn't seem like there's a lot of effort in drawing 4 lines on there and just calculating with a preliminary or whatever. I just dated myself, preliminary guys. So
Yeah, I know.
what the square, he knows what the square foot area is of each type of those categories, because
Okay,
that is
anything else,
important
Frank?
down the road.
Anything else, Frank?
First of all, did you straighten out Chris Reed? Did we get the right fire chief? Remember when we went through the performance criteria, it says they spoke to Chris Reed, fire chief of Berwick. It just needs to make sure it says Dennis Plant, not Chris Reed, unless he's our fire chief, I don't know. And then again, looking at some of those performance criteria as well, you made mention to dust control, and you were going to be using dust control for construction vehicles watering down, and you'd have you'd have to make the arrangements for draw off of water or wherever you do that. That's all pretty much standard. But in there, it also said blasting. And is there any anticipated blasting of rock on that site? I know you were going to do some geotechnical soils work, but if there's a blasting, I would want to make sure we've done some kind of a pre-blast survey, because we don't need to be rolling up the neighbors.
Jen Mitchell had anything to do with that.
What's that?
Oh, Lee J was
It
not.
would be very unlikely that blasting would occur. That's just.
Thought I was on mute. I apologize.
And then the only other thing, my big hang up has been,
Good laugh.
my big hang up has been who owns these lots? This is a landlocked piece of land, 6A. It's going to take entrance off of Route 236. Is there some kind of a driveway easement that's been prepared, that will be prepared, or is going to be recorded that allows you guys to go in and out of there? Because there's no access on the back end of the site on Pigtail Lane side. And then ultimately there's that 3-lot thing that Mr. Bodwell kind of alluded to, which that's hanging me up, but it has no bearing on you guys.
All right, why don't we have Les Bodwell answer that question? Les?
Is he with us?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you for being with us, Les.
Les, you're on mute. Les, you're on mute.
Mute. Okay, sure. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. So the answer to that question is that this property will actually be lot 6, not lot 6A. So the lot that fronts on Route 236 is lot 6. We're going to do a lot line adjustment to make lot 6 big enough to encompass the solar farm, so that is not another division of lot 6A.
So that becomes lot 6. So that piece in the very back that you have a building on, will that become 6A? Don't you have another little piece way in the back off of Pigtail Lane?
Right. So what I did was I cut a house lot off of lot 6A, and that's what I built on. So I have the remainder of lot 6A that's kind of in between lot 6 and myself currently. Upon approval of this solar farm, we will do a lot line adjustment to make lot 6 large enough to house the solar farm. So it won't be another division. It will just be a lot line change to lot 6.
But does that go all the way to, does that be totally inclusive of your building lot in the back? Or will that become 6A? Because right now, when I looked at the tax maps, there's no tax assessor's number that's been assigned to that lot of yours.
It'd be 6A-1 probably.
It's probably
So I
6A1, yeah.
I believe that, yeah. So then the question becomes is not really about this project we're talking about now. The question about 6A is, I have a lot 6A that I cut a house lot off of. So I divided that lot. That's not this project though. This project is lot 6.
I realize that, but that lot, what is that called? Lot 6A1, James? I mean, has Karen identified an assessor number for that lot? Because it's not called out at all. It just says it's your name, Les.
It'd be most likely 6A1, and then 6A goes away completely.
6A goes away completely.
Right, but we're talking about stuff that's in the future. We got to talk about.
No. I'm talking about making sure we've got frontage on Route 236 for this project, and I think Les has just answered that. Lot 6 is going to become mostly merged in with lot 6A and go away. So that answers that frontage question.
What else, Frank? Anything else?
I reserve the right to come back to me, but I think I did a pretty good job, I think, getting through my notes, and I appreciate the time you guys spent answering them, especially you, Les.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Sean, do you have anything else? Sean Winston, you have anything?
I just had one other question going back to the decommissioning plan. Reading through it, there isn't anything in there that states who is ultimately responsible for the decommissioning. when it happens. I think that should be in there. What party, whether it's Berwick Solar LLC or if it's the landowner.
Yep.
It talks about, Berwick Solar prepared the plan, they're filing the plan, but it doesn't say in the plan who is ultimately responsible for executing the plan at the end.
And I can make that edit. It will be Berwick Solar LLC or any of its successors. EMI, the company that is developing this project, has been around for 45 years. We've always followed through on these kind of commitments, and we're going to keep doing this.
And between you and Les, that should be in the lease somehow too. That should be a provision in the lease as far as decommissioning. I would assume Les would want that.
I believe it is in the lease. I don't have the lease directly in front of me, but I know that was a point that, I discussed with my attorney in reference to the legality of the lease.
So Mr. Winston, I can make that edit to the decommissioning plan. Just add a little sentence that says responsibility of Berwick Solar LLC or its successors.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
All right, anything else, Sean?
Nope, that's all I had.
David?
I am good, thank you.
All right, so the way we stand tonight, unless there's any other questions, for me, of course, somebody can make a motion for this application, but I think that we still have a couple loose ends to tie up. I think we have the 2 weeks that we can tie it up and put this back on the agenda for the 4th. I know we were talking about, more of a landscape plan, where you're putting these trees. Also, the decommission plan was the big thing as well, just having that there. And then also, if we can get James technical information on these panels so that the abutters can do their research and look them up. Go ahead.
May we make those? I mean, these are frankly things that we could get you like tonight, other than the vegetation management plan, which we'll develop over time. Is it possible to make this conditions of an approval? It would really be helpful if we were able to move forward with an approul tonight. I don't want to.
It's entirely up to the board. I mean, I'm not comfortable voting on this tonight. I know that you guys want to get started, and I understand that you're under timeline, but these are just some things that I would just like to see provided ahead of time. Granted, yes, they can be conditions of approval, but what if you come out with a landscape plan that is not suitable? So that's why I'm not comfortable voting on this tonight unless anybody else on the board would like to make a motion.
No, I would like to see some information come in because of the abutters. They're concerned about chemical hazards and those kinds of things, as well as the screening. So I'm in tune with you, Dave, on not acting on this tonight. But it would give I think Lee J and James a chance to start pulling together the next round of documents we're going to need.
So let's talk a little bit about the screening plan. So we've presented you lines of vegetative management, and we have that. We can make some edits to that and have it in 2 weeks. That feels like one of these goalposts that is never going to be fixed, of where this, what an appropriate vegetative management plan is. That sounds frankly like an incredibly subjective decision. So, I mean, we're happy to make some edits and push them around a little bit, but and ultimately that is what we're going to do. But I really am concerned about that one. The certifications, the edit to the decommissioning plan, that's all stuff we can get you immediately. But
could you go out to the site and actually flag trees that you would plan on leaving, so the abutters can at least look across the line and see the existing growth that's going to stay? I know when you flag a tree, a logger cuts it down, but we'll make sure we take the flag down before a logger goes out there.
I don't think that was something we were contemplating at this stage of the process, truthfully. I mean,
it might go a long way in appeasing the abutters that have made the effort to write letters and speak this evening. So,
all right, David, Ross Lyons.
Probably that and some images of the units would probably help with some of the abutters as well, and the tech spec sheets on them.
And James, we don't have findings of facts or conditions of approval this evening either.
No.
Just a very basic draft of the findings of fact, but there's been a lot of things that have been discussed tonight that.
And that's why I don't like to vote on application completeness unless we have findings of fact and conditions of approval. I don't like going back after the fact.
What is the status of the June 11th date that you guys threw out as the target date for a go, no go decision from CMP or whoever, PUC?
They
Have they moved that out, or is that
they pushed it back 1 week. CMP or Maine Public Utilities Commission released guidance yesterday that pushed that decision back 1 week.
So if we wait
sorry,
I think we can wait to June 4th and do everything, and that gives you your 11 plus another week. So
sure, we're happy to get you what you need. We'll work on a vegetative management plan. I really, that's something that we'll get you shortly. And if we could have feedback on that when we send it to you, because I want to note my concern here about the subjectivity of that vegetative management.
I understand that.
And James, share that with your butters, please.
Yeah,
when that comes in.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just would add that I did have a landscape architect develop this plan, just based on screening that's been done around facilities like this. So he's very experienced in doing this stuff. I mean, we can move stuff around, but I'm just not, is it okay for you to describe what you're thinking a little bit more? I think you've all seen the plan, right? The landscaping plan.
Yes.
So I just, I want to be able to bring back to him, he's not on this call, and say, okay, this is what the planning board wants to see.
I would just try to make it as wild as possible, in the sense that, you don't want, like I said before, you don't want, 2 rows of white pine 8 feet on center, down the side of the property line. But if they can just mix it up and if you've got a bunch of different trees you said you were putting in there,
yeah, we do.
Just almost, put them in a bag and just then toss them out there, in the sense of making it look as natural as possible, not like a two rows of trees, offsetting each other. Throw them in there and mix them all up.
What is the typical height of these panels when they're tilted on the angle they have to be
15
at?
feet.
Pardon?
15 feet.
15 feet. So we're putting 8-foot trees up. So that's why I think if you can blend in as much of the natural as well, I think that would go a long way with the abutters.
All right. Does June 4th work for you guys?
Yes. But we'll have all those documents to you well before that. And please, if there are any other comments to the landscaping plan and anything else, please get those to us ahead of time.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next on the agenda is new business. Subdivision amendment. Final plan, lot line adjustment, 565 Portland Street. Map 572, lot 9-2. It's in the RCI zone. The applicant is Route 4 Self-Storage LLC. James.
Just let Neil and Tanner in. Hey, Tanner. All right. So the first order of business is the lot line adjustment for 569 Portland Street. If you remember at last meeting, they were proposing a minor subdivision, creating a third lot with access off Coffin Road. There were some questions on Coffin Lane being a private road. So I think in the time being and there were questions about the negotiations on that back lot. I don't know, Tanner can fill you on the details, but they're here for a lot line adjustment. And because it's a previously approved subdivision plan, they're here for final plan approval per, I think it's Article 9 in our subdivision regulations. So that's the first order of business, is to get that lot line adjustment. And then they have a site plan amendment for an expansion for their facility.
All right, Neil, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I'm Neil Raposen with Civil Consultants, here on behalf of Tanner Herget, who's also here with me. Our first order of business is the lot line adjustment. And what we've done is we've gone back to a lot line adjustment that was kind of similar to what Frank had described in the last meeting, where it's more tightening up all the issues with that lot, with the existing nonconformity for the building encroachment on the setback. And we also did a lot line adjustment at the back of the subject lot to allow for a stormwater treatment area to be installed to treat all the impervious area that's existing on this lot, because the size of that, the proposed development that's going to be coming in right after this is going to be a site location of development application with the state. So for that one, we need to treat all of our new proposed impervious, as well as go back and treat all that existing pavement and buildings that are on site. So I don't know if you want me to share the screen for that lot line adjustment, or if we want to refamiliarize ourselves with that, or.
Sure.
Okay, let's do that here. Okay. Is that up there now?
I think so. Is it working? No. Oh, there it is.
Okay, there we go. All right, so here's that. This is the revised, the amended subdivision plan, and it's basically kind of jogs out these edges. This edge here takes a portion of this driveway that goes up into the shop, into the repair facility, and puts that back on his property. So that takes an existing easement that was on this lot to give him access there. It relieves that easement, so now the new revised lot has no encumbrances on it. This secondary little slice up here, this is what allows that it swaps with this one to kind of make whole this lot. And then this jog in this section is to bring the existing building that's there into conformance. And then once we get back here, this is where we have this bumped out beyond the back of that, beyond the back of the existing development. So in the future, we can get a stormwater treatment facility, stormwater treatment BMP back there, and still have the room to get it in on the subject lot, and not have to encumber any other lots. So it remains a the two-lot subdivision. We go back up here. This is the previously approved subdivision amendment, which shows the same basic 2 lots. However, this lot is now going to have those jogs in it to take away all the nonconformance.
Neil, can you, with your cursor, show where that leach field is, that new leach field is for the marijuana place?
I guess we'll start off with questions from Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was afraid he was going to take it off the screen and we wouldn't be able to see it. So.
Are you talking on Dino's piece here?
Yeah, on Paul Harvey's piece, didn't we have to modify the leach field there, push that out in the back?
That I don't have that located on here.
But it's not encroaching on any of these new lines that you've got. I'm afraid. I just want to make sure we're not, doing a lot line adjustment and find out we've encroached on the reserve area or the septic area of the relocated septic system.
Gotcha. No, it's, as far as I know, when we had the wetlands mapped up to here, and any of these, let me go back up to I have the existing conditions plan up here too, so. So what we've done through here, we have this is the existing conditions plan, and this wetland runs all the way through up here. So unless he has that septic right up tight, right on that wetland, it wouldn't be encroaching on that with our lot line adjustment here. This this brings this lot line out to here, and then this one splits in here. So it kind of ends in the middle of that wetland, then comes back in and cuts back. So
Did you do that plan for him, Neil?
no,
Who
no,
was the engineer for that?
I'm not sure who he had do that.
That was MJS.
Was it MJS?
Can we just double check and make sure we haven't created another reason to not get this thing going?
All right, so first off, we're looking at it's kind of like two different things tonight. So I guess we're kind of bleeding over into the next thing on the agenda too. So, because we're just looking at the lot line adjustment and now we're going into expansion. So, I mean, I guess we can we have to act on them separately, but we can discuss them at the same time, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I know what Frank's getting at is the location of a septic field that's out behind this lot, out behind that expanded building out here.
Okay.
I have, let's see. So you said we moved did we have them move it or?
Well, when they expanded their building for that additional use in the back, they encroached on their existing system.
Right.
And they then pushed it further back behind the property. And it's such a narrow lot. I just want to make sure we got two engineers talking to one another, I guess.
I have the plan. I have the plan here from MJS dated December 20th. And the proposed septic is almost behind HB cycle, the existing HB cycle, the new proposed septic. So it doesn't look like it'd be
so it'd be back in here.
So the one that's closer to that property line is the one that they're abandoning.
Don't think so.
Right.
The one that they were abandoning was right behind the building because they were adding on to the back of the building.
Well, that's what I
Right,
thought, but that's not what James just explained.
No, it's because HP said it's because there's the two separate buildings I think he's talking about there. There's the HP, the auto repair, and HP Cycles is the building that's further towards North Berwick, and that has that's going to have the bump out for the expansion. I believe that septic's directly behind that. Correct, James?
No, Frank is correct. There is a septic system that they proposed that is on the, I don't know which way your north arrow is on this plan, but it's behind the parking area and closest to your northerly property line.
You got to lay those two plans over one another and make sure
I guess
created a faux pas here.
Yeah, I can double check on that.
Okay.
Sean, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have anything right now.
All right. And David?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
All right. So first thing that we're looking at is the subdivision amendment final plan lot line adjustment. We're looking at application completeness tonight.
And the application is, I mean, it's essentially the same as the previous application, except instead of it being a actual minor subdivision, it's a subdivision amendment and lot line adjustment.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. I'll make the motion that we determine this to be complete for a lot line adjustment.
Okay, we have a motion from Frank. Do we have a second?
Second.
I heard Sean first. Okay, further discussion from the board? All right, so roll call vote, Sean Winston,
Yes.
Frank Underwood,
Yes.
David Ross Lyons,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So yeah, this is just weird how we did this. So then we just voted, James, what did we there's only one application.
So that was the application. So he has two applications. So
Okay.
this one's for those. This one's for the subdivision amendment.
Okay. All right, now I see that. Okay, I see the second one. Okay. Moving on, site plan review, expansion of self-storage facility, 565 Portland Street, map R72, lot 9-2. It's in the RCI zone. It's Route 4 Self-Storage LLC is the applicant. So James.
Okay, so so when it comes to actually acting, I think you could act on the application for final plan tonight for the subdivision. If you guys chose.
You can find the application complete.
Right. Yeah, and it's because it's a lot line revision, it's already at final plan. So you can find the application complete and you could approve the application tonight for the lot line adjustment. But I mean, I can continue on for the actual site plan amendment.
Well, we can also vote on it in 2 weeks if we want.
Yep. Yeah, either way, it works for me. Yeah, because the thing that's outstanding is the septic. So I will read my memo. Route 4 Self-Storage is proposing an expansion to their existing site plan. The expansion includes 6 buildings with footprints of 3,500 square feet each. 2 buildings will be 5,360 square feet and 1 building 2,000 square feet. The total building floor area would be 60,220 square feet. So that's 33% lot coverage for all the buildings proposed and existing. And all buildings are proposed to be pre-engineered metal structures. There will be no employees on site, and that's the current condition. Temporary parking will be available in front of the units. 30-foot access way is provided for maintenance and management use. Chief Plant indicated there are no outstanding issues with the layout, and the facility is proposed to be accessible 24/7. The project requires a DEP site location permit, and part of their stormwater management plan, Neil indicated there's 2 proprietary, what are called, storm filter units. And Neil, I guess you could explain what exactly those are. An underdrain grass filter, catch basin, and culverts make up the rest of the stormwater management on site. The applicant has requested a waiver for landscaping, and essentially the reason for that is because of the grade off of Route 4. The applicant says that the landscaping basically wouldn't be seen from Route 4. So the next steps will be consider the waivers requested and determine application completeness.
All right, Neil.
Okay, so once again, Neil Raposa here for Tanner Herget and Route 4 Self-Storage. Tanner, if at any point you have something to add in, feel free to interject. So this is a pretty straightforward expansion of a storage site, except for the fact that the size of it pushes us into site location review for DEP. So that kind of caused it to kind of go back and right kind of a lot of wrongs that happened on the site prior to this, as far as the drainage and the treatment have gone up to this point. So like James said, we're proposing to use 2 proprietary systems, just due to the fact of the amount of space that some of these would have taken to treat per the DEP regulations. It would have been prohibitive for the project. So these systems are basically a big catch basin system. You catch all your water and you put it into one of the temporary holding ponds. I'm going to go ahead and throw the screen up there. I just feel strange not pointing at a plan. Okay, so what we're talking about here is this half of the lot to install the new storage buildings on. This portion up here where the larger storage buildings are, that's where the existing previously car dealership storage area, and now a current vehicular storage area. That's where all that gravel is here. We're expanding that towards the back, getting these new buildings same size as the existing buildings, just configured a little differently. Then a lot more stormwater management being brought in here, like I said, to treat this better than it has been in the past. So we're proposing 1 underdrain grass filter here. This is a holding pond for that storm filter unit, which is basically a big 9x13 vault that's in the ground, like an oversized catch basin, and then it has treatment filters that go in it. They're kind of like round cylinders, and those are maintained. Like it's usually every year they're checked. And when I was talking with the rep from the company that manufactures them, said they've been lasting on average, 3 to 4 years. So that's something that the DEP will require a contract to keep up the maintenance. So we know that they won't be forgotten about or just left alone out there like a lot of the stormwater things have been in the past. Currently, we're proposing just to use the same entrance with no change to it from existing. Same security. Be expanding the fence that's out there, the existing fence, just to keep the same amount of security out here as is now. As you can see here, this is taking into account that lot line adjustment, which brings this building here into conformance with the previously existing lot line. This corner was within the setback. So this new proposed building here is just outside the setback, similar to this smaller building on this side. And this is just gonna conform to all the regulations. We have quite a bit of improvement environmentally. I've been in talks with the DEP as far as how we're going to approach this and this treatment, and I've gotten good feedback so far, but they have not started the review of the actual site location permit yet. So once we get into that, there may or may not be some tweaks in the plan. I don't know if you had anything to add. It's pretty straightforward.
All right. Well, I know there was a lot of questions just before this. I mean, tonight we could vote this application complete and schedule a site walk and a public hearing tonight. Unless there's any other questions, we can do a motion for, yes, Lee J.
I don't have a question. I apologize, but I want to set Frank straight so he feels comfortable. Neil, leave that plan up there.
Yep.
I went and looked at 569 in my files. This is wonderful having this technology capability. So Neil, if you take your cursor and move it to the right behind that building.
Yeah.
There, the septic system is well within the 25-foot property line setback and probably 25 feet off the rear corner of that building addition that's shown on the abutting property. So the septic system is nowhere near, right in there. Yep.
Okay.
Right where your hand was. Right in, nowhere near encroaching on the abutter's property.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I didn't have it in front of me, so I didn't want to put it out there.
I also emailed it to you, just so you know.
Okay, are there any questions from the board members on this that weren't asked before?
I have a couple when you get a chance.
Yes, go ahead, Frank.
I noticed on this L1 drawing you got here, Neil, does that driveway at the bottom that's drawn in phantom, does that get abandoned?
That would be abandoned with this plan, yep.
Does that jeopardize any curb cut that you may have with the DOT on the Route 4 corridor? I mean, that's just something the landowner might, but if you're going to abandon it, then that goes away, correct?
Right, yeah, and we have discussed that, and the DOT permit for this one was for the auto use that was on this lot.
Okay.
At that point, it was a separate lot.
So that will lapse then? That
correct. Yep.
Okay. It looks like you've skirted the wetlands, so there's no wetlands impacts. Everything is just.
Nope. There's we have a wetland impact here that's it's below the 4,300 square feet.
So it doesn't trigger anything from Army Corps or anything like that.
Correct. Yep.
And then the last thing I want to make sure. Well, two things. Always got an extra one. Part of the site location law, they do have to show to the DEP financial capabilities, correct, Lee J? And all we have in there is a letter from TD Bank. Is that, have I got the right application?
Yep.
Yes.
It just says they're willing to support them, but this by no means is a lending obligation. So at some point when they come through the site location, they will have to demonstrate to the DEP that they have that financial capability, and that should be approved as part of their
That is
DEP.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. That would be part of the DEP package.
And then the last thing on completeness, we in our ordinance, we require them to send out letters to department heads, police, chief, fire, this, that, and the other. In some cases, we get letters back. Some cases we get no response. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be tightening up our own thing to require that the chiefs and the public works director and the selectmen, for example, they get a letter as well. That we actually require that they respond and not, just talk to James passing in the hallway. To me, that doesn't quite muster up to,
Yeah, I don't think that we could force them to. I mean, maybe James can just follow up with, the chiefs or whoever, the various departments. And say,
all the town manager's got to do is tell these guys to respond. It doesn't take long to respond to these things.
I agree.
Because
So-
we could call it not complete because we don't have 3 letters in, technically.
Well, we can get those letters.
Okay.
And it's not the applicant's fault that those letters have not.
I know that.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, Frank.
All right, thank you.
But before we vote on the application complete, we have to vote on the waiver request, correct? Yes. All right, so James, could you read the waiver once again?
Sure. The waiver is for 9.8.f.2.b.vi, the landscape plan. So that's the request for the landscape plan, waiver for landscape plan.
Okay, so the motion would be for approval of the waiver request. Sean?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver request for the landscape plan. I drive by this quite a bit, and if we put landscaping in there, you're at an elevation on the road where you're gonna be looking over the top of the landscaping, so I have no issue with that.
Okay, so we have a second.
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Frank. All right, so further discussion on this?
One question. What about signage? I mean, does that fall out under landscaping and signage?
No.
Or is that a whole separate entity?
That's all separate.
Okay. I'm assuming we're not changing any signage on this thing.
That's all
No.
separate.
Right.
All right, so I'll do a roll call vote. Sean Winston,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
David Ross Lyons.
No.
That's a no from David, and I vote yes. So that's 3-1. All right. Now we have to vote on the application being complete.
I'll make a motion that that we recognize the application as complete at this point.
Okay, so we have a motion from Frank. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by David. Further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Sean Winston,
Yes.
Frank Underwood,
Yes.
David Ross Lyons,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's 4-0. And I assume that we want to do a site walk, and the next meeting would be on the 4th of June.
You have, do we have a site walk scheduled already with the School Street one?
PK storage.
Yeah, isn't there one already set for 5 o'clock on that day?
I know there's a public hearing. I forget if we scheduled a site walk. I know we typically do.
Yeah, you
we go
did.
back- Okay.
No, David says it's 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah.
It's convenient to have you here.
That's right.
Can I just say one thing, Dave, for scheduling purposes? You folks, typically in your bylaws, you guys don't meet on July 2nd. And I think you guys deserve probably that off. But for scheduling wise, we're looking at either June 18th, and that agenda is looking pretty full, or then it would be July 16th would be the public hearing. And I would almost recommend July 16th unless, you guys think otherwise, just based off where our schedule is backing up already.
July 16th for what?
For the public hearing.
On this application?
Yep.
Neil, where are you with the site location law with the DEP? Has that been filed and is that on a 60-day cycle or is that?
No, I was going back and forth with them today actually about it so we could get it in and try to get it with minimal review time. I want to try and iron everything out beforehand, but that's supposed to be going in tomorrow.
And what is their time frame that they can take? Is it 60 days?
For the site location?
Yeah.
It's 180 days.
Yeah,
180 days, okay.
and longer if they want.
That's correct.
They drag it out.
Would you be opposed to doing a site walk and a public hearing in July?
I think we can do that with the schedule with the DEP. It's going to be, we're going to be out that far for their review. So I think we can do that.
All right, James, what was that date?
July 16th. And
5 o'clock? Does that work? 5 o'clock?
I think that should work.
Yes.
I apologize. I'm still social distancing on sidewalks, guys. I'm older.
That's okay. All right, Neil, we'll see you then on the 16th.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is conditional. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tanner.
Oh, James, you have something?
I was just saying bye to Tanner.
Oh. Next on the agenda is conditional use application. It's a sawmill at 96 Cemetery Road, map R37, lot 15A. It's in the R2 zone, and the applicant is Thomas Wright.
He is on his way in.
I'll just wait for him to come in and then turn it over to James.
Sure. So Tom Wright has requested a conditional use to operate a 36 horsepower sawmill. Because the sawmill is over 30 horsepower, it requires a conditional use permit. I just have the definition of a sawmill, a mill or machine for sawing logs and the lumber, and then it just has the standard embedded in there for anything greater than 30 horsepower, and it's a conditional use in the R2 zone. Tom listed poultry as a use also, and we had a discussion about classifying that as agriculture instead of animal husbandry. So while it is on the application and also a greenhouse would also fall under agriculture. So the review tonight is just on the sawmill. I just put a note that the maximum decibel level is set at 60 decibels, and that's measured 4 feet above ground at the property line. I think Tom, you can fill in a minute on the exact distance between the sawmill and the property. I think there's 100 feet. So I think that should be okay. And then it just says for any purpose, you can exceed the limit for a 15-minute period per day. And then Tom mentioned the lumber for the sawmill is mostly from a budding Wright family lot, which he uses for maintenance purposes. And there's also an exception in the ordinance to allow to go above the decibel level for maintenance purposes. And Tom just requested a waiver for plumbing permit because that's probably not applicable, and for the low impact design statement as well. But I think, my recommendation, I think this could be an application that could be approved tonight.
Application approved?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Turn it over to the applicant, Tom Wright. Got to come off mute, Tom.
I got you.
I was trying to. Good evening, everybody. James laid it out basically what I'm looking at doing. I'll give you a little bit of the history. Is I've had a bandsaw mill, 8 horsepower, very small one, that I've operated for a little more than 20 years. I got it originally because, as James said, my family has a 100-acre woodlot that we sit on, and we cut about 20 cords of firewood a year for the family. And occasionally we have trees that are coming down because they're damaged or diseased, and there is good lumber in there that we didn't want to turn into firewood. The problem with the bandsaw mill is that it's not very accurate and it's very slow and labor intensive. And about 5 years ago, I started looking into upgrading. Is I looked at several different types of mills. The one I settled on is made in British Columbia. It's a swing blade mill. It's a circular blade instead of a bandsaw. And at the time, I believe it was like 5 years ago when I first started discussing this, and I looked into it, and I asked down at the town hall. I can't remember if it was the planner at the time or the code enforcement at the time. We talked about it, and they said that they thought the limit was at 40 horsepower. So is the mill I wanted was 36 horsepower. So I figured it was, no problem. I bought it, got it set up. Is I actually ran it for a couple of seasons. Had no complaints from anybody. And is 2 years ago we had the land forested over, selectively cut. I dismantled it at that time and put it back into storage. Is when I brought it out this last fall to start setting it up, I checked with James this time around, and we looked at the specifics, and it came out as a 30 horsepower mill, not a 40 horsepower mill. So that's why where I am now is, as I said, I've been operating a mill here for more than 20 years. And is almost all the wood comes from the family land. I do occasionally have friends who drop logs off to mill. I'm not looking at doing this commercially. I'm too old and broken to do that. I'm looking at this as more as a hobby, supplying lumber for me and my family. All my neighbors are family. The closest people to the mill would be my sister and brother-in-law, Mary Ellen and Ron. Their house is approximately 200 feet from where the mill is set up. And there's the only other non-family neighbor I have is approximately 500 or 600 feet down the road. And there's quite a buffer of trees and a swamp between the two of us. And like I said before, I've never had any problem with anybody. I'm only looking at, like I said, looking at doing this part-time more as a hobby than anything. And that's my story.
Okay, we'll start off with David Ross Lyons. Question from the board.
I do not actually have any at this time. Thank you.
All right, Sean Winston.
I do not have any questions.
Frank Underwood.
I got a couple.
Really?
Shocker.
It's too bad we don't have a conditional use for homesteading, because Tom's narrative that he submitted, it does say conditional use for homesteading. And what he's trying to do there with a greenhouse and raising turkeys and chickens and a little sawmill is ideal for that. So as an aside, we should probably maybe look at whether or not homesteading should be considered a use that would be all encompassing, non-commercial kind of a thing. Are we now only dealing with the sawmill, so that the application needs to be revised to show that the greenhouse is on hold and the poultry house and turkey area, chicken area is on hold? That would be one question. The other thing would be is the logs are they ever hauled in over the road by a logging truck, Tom? Has it ever gotten to where it's that big of a operation? And it sounds like it's not. These guys might be bringing in one or two nice logs from on a flatbed trailer they're hauling behind their pickup truck. But I would be concerned about a sawmill on whether it's enclosed, how it is fueled, how the fuel is stored, if it's a diesel or if it's a gas. The other thing would be is that, are there any sales involved in this? Otherwise, if Tom is starting to sell this stuff, then it becomes retail to me, and maybe it's a little bit more than just a sawmill. And then likewise, when you've got slabs that you're going to cut off of these logs, the finished product is probably going to be stockpiled on site. We should show an area where that is. The slabs, are they gonna be just continued to be stockpiled on site and treated as slash and burned? Are they gonna be chipped? If there's chipping, we need to know where the chipping is taking place. That's another whole endeavor, I would assume. But I wish we had a homesteading thing, because there are a lot of families out there that could pigeonhole
Yeah,
what
we
they're
don't.
doing in their backyards right now into that
Listen to those
use.
questions.
Pardon?
James, can you weigh in on some of those questions? I mean, we're just looking, this is something that has been happening at that. If Tom would have went out and bought a smaller motor, he wouldn't have even had to be here at this point, right?
Correct, but
Pretty much.
We were just kind of talking about that, if you will, although you didn't see our lips move. I mean, he's already got a motor that's 36 horsepower out there now, correct, Tom? Or somewhere
Yes.
around there?
Yes.
So you're just replacing the motor almost in kind.
Well,
And
no.
you're grandfathered because you're already running over a 30 horsepower motor.
Oh, no, my old sawmill was only 8 horsepower. It was terribly underpowered.
Oh. Okay.
But as far as horsepower is, I use my tractor out here all the time, and that's 43 horsepower. I use my lawnmower out here all the time. That's 25 horsepower. It's a rather arbitrary number for the horsepower. I have a little bit of ancient history about how this all came about, but I won't go into that right now.
Well, okay. I was under the assumption that you were basically replacing in kind the size of the motor.
It's a different one.
Okay.
I can answer
All
some of Frank's questions. As far as the fuel, it's a gasoline motor. I store it, the gas, the same as I store it with my lawn tractor, my diesel with my farm tractor, my chainsaw, my weed whacker. I store gas here all the time.
In a
It
shed
has
or
a
something.
2-gallon tank on it. It's not like I'm going to be coming in with a truck, with a tank full of gas. I'm going down to Cumberland Farms. As far as the logs and the slabs, the lumber that comes off will be stacked in the yard, around the mill. I'm not going to have, a whole, acre of lumber there. Most of this is going to be, cut and used. My brother Michael wants me to help cut new timbers for his barn that's fallen down. So that's the type of thing I'm looking at. And as far as the cutoffs and the slabs and everything, we burn those. We heat with wood. My whole family heats with wood. We utilize all of that. The sawdust we use, the shavings from my planer I use. Everything is consumed on site here. So it's not like it's going to be stockpiled and laying around.
And you're not chipping anything. You're just
No. The only chips I have is I have had, when the town was clearing brush this year, they drop chips off here. And I also have a friend who has a log service who dumps chips here occasionally.
But you're not running a chipper.
No. And, you talk about, the thing with the homesteading is, I think that you need to look at maybe a whole thing with the sawmills also, because my sawmill is technically a portable sawmill. I can break it down in a matter of an hour and put it in the back of a pickup truck and move it. And it takes me a couple of hours to set it back up. So if I have a friend who's building a house and cuts a bunch of trees on his lot, technically I can't bring my saw over there and cut his wood. But if he wanted to come in with the Forest Service and come in with their 400 horsepower chipper and run it, there's no problem with that. I think there's a little bit of disparity there that, it needs to be worked around for portable mills and things like that to be considered the same as any other forestry equipment that's on a lot. So as far as sales I have not sold anything I basically have been giving away things my whole family has a supply of wooden slab benches now and things like that. So is I don't want to get into sales, is that's not my goal. My goal is just to keep me occupied and utilize the trees that I have. Oh yeah, and Frank, you asked about, bringing logs in.
Yeah.
And exactly as you said, is I don't have a log truck coming in to deliver things. Is I have friends who have a tree come down in their yard, and they would bring a 1 or 2 logs over, and I would mill it for them, and we'd work on an exchange where they get half the lumber and I get half the lumber, that type of deal.
Are you milling hardwood and softwood or just softwood?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
Lee J, do you have any comments? Because it'd be a lot easier for Tom to take his sawmill over to the guy's place instead of bringing the logs over to Tom's place. I mean,
I think we're getting in the weeds on this one. This is something that we can address when we look at the land use ordinance again.
well, I guess I'm not really pushing to approve this tonight. Okay, I guess that's where I'm going. I think there's still, and Tom has made this real simple because there's no poultry involved in it anymore or any greenhouse, and that's what kind of prompted me to go down that retail thing, because if you're going to process eggs and stuff like that, that's another whole can of.
No, I wasn't planning on doing that either, Frank. That was all family oriented too. Is a lot of people don't realize that I have, I think, 15 registered voters in Berwick that are family members. So I have quite an extended family, looking for eggs and meat and logs and things. So
That's why I say that homesteading thing is ideal for a large family like that that's got roots in a community. So,
Well, homesteading, just real quick, homestead is allowed by right. I mean, or it's a permit through JED. So, and I don't think that's something that should come. Never mind. We'll get into that with land use ordinance discussions at a later time.
All right, so we're just voting on the sawmill tonight, and if we don't necessarily have to approve this application tonight, but we have to approve it complete. But first, we have to vote on the waiver. James, can you read the waiver?
There is the external plumbing permit, and then the low impact design statement. So stormwater statement.
And I didn't know when I filled out the application whether that applied to me or not. So I just put the waiver down anyways, because I'm not doing either one of those things. So.
Well, you already have plumbing inside your home. I mean, you don't need plumbing for this. And I think the low impact design, this is going to be set up. It's natural wood that's set up over, dirt or sod. So I don't, there's really no need for that. So there's 2 waivers there. So the first waiver will be for the plumbing.
I move that we waive the plumbing for the Cemetery Road sawmill project.
Okay, we have a motion by Frank. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by David. Further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Sean Winston.
Yes.
Frank Underwood.
Yes.
David Ross Lyons.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that's 4-0. And then second is the low impact design. Low impact design is already there. It's always been there. Doesn't get any more low impact design than this.
I'll make the motion to approve the low impact design, the waiver for the low impact design requirement.
Okay, we have a motion by Sean.
I'll second.
Seconded by David Ross Lyons. Further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Sean Winston.
Yes.
Frank Underwood.
Yes.
David Ross Lyons.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's 4-0. Next step would be application complete.
I want to just offer one Paul Bovair comment. Looking at the application, it says the zoning district we're in is 2. It's R2, James. Okay, just put an R in front of that 2. Paul would want to make sure that was done that way.
So we're voting on the application completeness.
Yes. I'll do a motion that we find the application complete.
All right.
I'll
We've got a
second
motion
that.
From David Ross Lyons. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Seconded from Frank Underwood. Further discussion. Roll call vote. Sean Winston.
Yes.
Frank Underwood.
Yes.
David Ross Lyons.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the application is complete.
For just the
Now
sawmill.
It's entirely up to the board if they want to proceed into, I mean, we have findings of facts and conditions of approval.
And we're only dealing with the Sawmill, correct?
Correct, that's it tonight. So we can approve the findings of facts, the conditions of approval, which I don't believe there are any. Correct me if I'm wrong, James. There are no conditions of approval. And then application or voting on the complete application.
I mean, with Tom's answers, I can go either way with this now. I feel that he's responded to my basic concerns on fuel and this, that, and the other, and he's really simplified it by taking out the other two components. So a straightforward sawmill that he's been running there for all these years anyway. So sounds like it could be. I have no problem moving forward if somebody.
Would you like to make a motion, Frank?
I'll let somebody else make the motion.
I will make the motion.
All right, so we have a motion from David Ross Lyons. We have a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Sean Winston. Further discussion. Okay, so we're voting on the findings of fact. Roll call vote, Sean Winston,
Yes.
Frank Underwood,
Yes.
David Ross Lyons,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, there are no conditions of approval. So it will be finding the application or just approving the application. That would be the motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional application for the sawmill at 96 Cemetery Road.
We have a motion by Sean Winston. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
David Ross Lyons, further discussion. All right, roll call vote, Sean Winston,
Yes.
Frank Underwood,
Yes.
David Ross Lyons,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, that's 4-0, and that is done. You're all set there, Mr. Wright.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Probably the easiest application you ever came before the board on, huh?
Is when I get it up and running, you guys all have to come out and see it.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
What do you have to do? Bring a log?
No, you just have to take the board off it.
I got some logs I'll bring.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Hey, can I just, point of order, is Lee J there? Or
I am. I'm right here. I'm
On
in the
these-
dark.
On these conditional use applications, I could read who signed it in Tom's case. Really clear signature, okay?
Actually, why don't we bring this up in informational items and we can let Tom
We
get
can
on.
bring it up wherever you would like, Mr. Chair.
All right, Tom, thank you. You're all set.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, before we go on to Frank's question, James, is anybody in the waiting room for public comment?
We have Margaret from the past public hearing, and I don't know if she's following along on BCTV, but I think the public hearing was it continued or was it closed?
It was closed.
So, and you really can't talk about the application if the applicants aren't here. So she's the only one in the waiting room. So no.
Well, she can definitely give public comment if she wants. We just
Okay.
can't answer it. We could just ask her if she's got any public comment.
Was she listening in on our full discussion, James?
I would have no way to know. She would just have to be following along on BCTV.
It'd be nice if she did because of the effort we're trying to make, so.
I don't think she's going to have a public comment that isn't related to the solar project.
All right. Next is the informational items from the board and staff. So Frank, go ahead and what's your question for Lee J?
My question is, when somebody signs one of these applications, I could read Tom's signature as Tom Wright that signed it, but do you think I can read Paul Harvey or do you think I can read Les Bodwell? And some of them look like just a line across there. Can we tighten up that so we at least have a printed name in the signature above it? Because
You can make your application form say and do whatever you'd like it to.
I think because people are so lazy with their signatures now and come to find out kids can't even write in cursive anymore. So
I'll tell you what, James, from now on, when people come in to sign applications, make them write their name, like kind of like when you buy a house, you have to write your name next to your signature.
Right.
Right.
All right.
Cursive dead, Frank. Get over it.
Problem solved.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have two small things. I just want to confirm that we're not meeting on July 2nd. per our bylaws.
I mean, that's entirely up to what everybody else thinks. I'll take the consensus. Is anybody going away that weekend?
Yes.
Yeah,
Gone.
my
I'm not going
recommendation.
anywhere, but I could use a break.
I think I think you guys deserve a break.
All right, then that sounds good. We're going to skip that, and we have every right to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys have done a fantastic job keeping these applications going. My last thing is, speaking of Pablo Rivera, he made an appearance at our last virtual Envision Berwick meeting. That was very exciting.
Cool.
We had Pat and Paul, the tag team. So I wrote them at Legia. I mailed them the draft packet in the mail today. That's
Very
all I
cool.
got.
Great.
All right, anybody else? Next is the adjournment.
Make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
The motion.
Second.
Second from Sean. All in favor, raise your hands.
Wait, I did.
Now,
Have
we
a good
don't
night.
log, does Terry log us out?
No, I just press end.
Okay. Thank you, Jane. Hey, beard's looking good.
Oh, thank you. I had to trim. This is the length. I trimmed it, so.
Oh, just let it go.
I got to keep the gray in there, you know.
Yeah. Well, it'll get to mine probably.
I think I can.
Everybody gone?
Yeah, I think we're still. Let's see.